My father helped investigate a series of unsolved murders that terrorized his hometown. Years later, he moved us away to keep us safe. But when a detective showed up to reopen the case, new evidence came to light and left us wondering if we'd escaped just in time or not at all. There were 8. Before I was born, before we ever moved, before the name of the town started disappearing from road signs and newspapers, there were 8. 8 people, all dead within a year. Different ages. No clear connection. The police couldn't figure it out. No prints, no pattern, just fear piling on itself like a second season no one wanted. My father wasn't a cop. He wasn't a detective, but everyone said he was helpful. He ran the hardware store, the only one in town. Knew everyone's name. Kept batteries behind the counter for the kids and floodlights ready for the old folks. When the killings started, he gave out locks at cost. Installed a few himself. Walked people home when they felt unsafe. They trusted him. Even after the 3rd body, they kept coming to him for advice on security cameras, motion sensors, second-hand padlocks. He always knew what to say. The town changed quickly. People stopped walking after dark. The neighborhood watch became a rotation of retired men gripping flashlights and whispering about what kind of person would do this. My mother said the fear felt like fog. It touched everything. She wasn't from there. She moved in during the middle of it all, rented a tiny apartment and took a job at the corner pharmacy. She told me years later, it was like I moved into a haunted house. You couldn't see the ghosts, but you knew they were watching. My father met her while fixing a light outside the store. She says she felt safe around him from the very beginning, and he was calm. That's how she always described it. Not brave, not loud, just calm. When the 8th body was found, a teenager who disappeared walking home from school, things went quiet. The police had nothing. The town had less. There were rumors about a drifter. Some said it was someone local. No one knew, or maybe they didn't want to. We left not long after. But the stories never did. I found them years later, old news clippings, forums, half-buried articles, all faded, all incomplete. And I started to wonder about what happened back then. My mother says they fell in love fast. The town was in chaos, but somehow he made her feel like she'd stepped out of it, like their life together existed in a quieter place, untouched by the fear curling around every house on their street. She always tells the story the same way. She was closing up at the pharmacy. He came in just before the lock turned, asking for bandages. Said he'd scraped his arm helping an older woman fix her storm door. She offered to patch it up right there. He smiled and let her. That's how it started. No flowers, no chasing, just gentle familiarity. She says it felt like fate. He would walk her home in the evenings, flashlight in one hand, his free arm around her shoulder. Everyone was afraid, but not her. Not with him. Your father made everything feel normal, she told me once. When people were afraid to leave their porches, he was trimming hedges and helping people fix their fence posts. He kept things going. Steady, reassuring. The town trusted him, so she did too. While others barricaded themselves inside, she let herself believe she'd found something good. He never rushed her, never said too much. He didn't have to. When he spoke, it was with certainty. You shouldn't be alone out here after dark. I'll walk you, it's no trouble. You're safe now. She believed every word. By the time the last victim was found, she was already pregnant. She says the town felt quieter after that, not safer, just exhausted. Like fear had burned everything down and now people were stepping out of the ashes, pretending they were warm. That's when he told her it was time to leave. And she agreed. She said she asked him why at the course of packing, and he said he wanted to build his family in a safe town, not one with a dark history. Weeks after I was born, my mother said it happened fast. One morning, he came into the nursery while she was folding clothes and said, "We need to go, it's not safe here." She asked what happened. He didn't explain. He just said, "The town's changing. People are on edge, we don't want to raise her in this." That was enough. They packed that same day. My mother called her job to quit. He closed the hardware store without a sale. No goodbyes. No packing boxes stacked by the door, just bags in the backseat by nightfall, and keys dropped off with the landlord the next morning. We didn't stay to sell the house. He said it could wait. We drove for hours. My mother rocked me in the back seat while he kept both hands on the wheel. At the first rest stop, he asked if she needed anything. She said no. He bought her water anyway. When we got to the new place, the house was already rented. Small 2 bedrooms, a long hallway that stayed cold no matter the season. He carried everything in himself. No one helped, no one visited. He said it was better that way. We didn't go back, not for visits, not for holidays. Not once. At preschool, I didn't cry when the teacher raised her voice. A boy knocked over my snack tray and burst into tears when the aide scolded him. I just picked up my cup, shook off the crackers, and sat back down. Another time, 2 kids argued over a stuffed animal in the corner. The girl screamed. The boy hit her. Everyone froze. I watched from the reading mat without blinking. The teacher said I was calm. During nap time, the other kids tossed and turned. Some whispered. One girl always needed a hand to hold. I stayed still. Eyes open, not restless, just unmoving. Miss Carla, the head teacher, crouched beside my mat once and whispered, "You don't sleep." I looked at her, said nothing. She told my mother after class. She's very quiet, doesn't fuss, but she doesn't seem to daydream either. My mother smiled. She's observant. At home, I didn't cry when I scraped my knee on the concrete step behind the porch. My mother rushed outside with a towel and a bandage. I sat still while she cleaned it. She said, "Doesn't it sting?" I said no. The next day at the park, a pigeon was hit by a passing bicycle. It flopped twice, then stopped moving. A little girl screamed. Her brother burst into tears. I walked over and stared down at the bird. My mother came behind me, hand on my shoulder. "Let's not look at that." I didn't move. The park monitor used a plastic bag to cover it and called someone. I watched until they carried it away. I was 5. At kindergarten orientation, the counselor handed each child a crayon and asked them to draw their happy place. Most drew parks, houses, cartoon characters. I drew a hallway, blank, narrow, no doors. The counselor asked if I had forgotten the rest. I said no. In music class, I didn't hum. I tapped my foot in perfect rhythm but didn't sing along. The teacher sent a note home. "She's not disruptive, she just doesn't engage." First grade, a girl dropped her lunch tray and ran out of the cafeteria crying. The aides followed. I stood up, picked up the tray, wiped the floor, and sat back down. The cafeteria worker said, "She's very helpful." By the time I was 7, the school started testing me. Vision, hearing, reading comprehension, then temperament. A new specialist came in and watched us play. She took notes. I built a house from blocks and knocked it down twice. When she asked why, I said I wanted to see how fast it fell the second time. At parent-teacher meetings, they called me quiet. "She doesn't misbehave," one said. "She's just different." One teacher raised a concern. "She doesn't cry, not when she's hurt, not when she's disciplined. I don't think I've ever seen her react with sadness." My mother said, "Maybe she just doesn't cry at school." Another said, "She watches the other children. Like she's waiting for something." My mother laughed, "She's just curious." The teachers nodded. That year, I was placed in a separate reading group. The librarian said I read too fast. I said the other kids turned their pages too slow. When my mother asked what I liked reading most, I said, "The animal books." She bought me storybooks with dogs and cats. I started checking out anatomy guides instead. One afternoon, the art teacher asked us to paint a face. Any face, some drew their mothers, some drew superheroes. I painted a face with no mouth. The teacher knelt beside me. "Is that someone you know?" I shook my head, I didn't name it. Later, I left the brush bristles down in the water jar too long and they curled at the ends. The teacher frowned and said I needed to be more careful. I apologized. She said, "It's okay." I knew it was. At a family cookout, my cousin tripped and cracked his lip on the edge of the patio stairs. Blood everywhere. He screamed until they wrapped him in a towel. Everyone hovered. I stayed on the swing. My aunt told my mother later, she didn't even flinch. My mother said she doesn't like chaos. The pediatrician asked me once if I had any nightmares. I said no. He said none. Not even monsters. I said monsters aren't real. He wrote something on his chart. At school, the principal introduced a buddy system for new kids. I was paired with a girl who cried 3 times the first week, once during lunch, once during recess, and once when she got lost walking to the bathroom. Each time I walked her where she needed to go, I didn't touch her. I didn't speak unless she asked something. When the teacher praised me, I nodded. She asked, "You don't mind helping her?" I said no. My mother said I was kind. One night during dinner, I asked what would happen if a person stopped feeling anything. My father looked up from his plate. He said, "Why do you ask?" I said, "Because some people cry when they're sad, and some don't. Does that mean the ones who don't aren't sad?" He said, "Maybe. Or maybe they just learn to hold it differently." My mother said, "You're thoughtful." I looked at my fork. He kept watching me. In second grade, we had a fire drill. The alarm was loud. Kids screamed. One girl vomited from panic. I walked out in a straight line. The substitute teacher didn't notice I was the only one not covering my ears. The nurse asked later if I was okay. I said yes. She said, "You're very brave." I said okay. That was the word people always used around me. Brave, quiet, focused, independent, they didn't know what else to call it, and I never corrected them. My father stood in doorways a lot. Sometimes in the middle of the night, barely a shadow, hands by his sides. My bedroom door was never fully shut. I'd wake up and see him there, not moving, not speaking, just standing like he'd walked in and forgotten why. One night I opened my eyes and saw him leaning against the frame, arms crossed, staring toward my desk. I didn't say anything. He didn't either. Eventually, he turned and walked away. At breakfast, he always asked what I dreamed about. "Nothing," I said once. He looked at me for a few seconds. "Try to remember." I said okay. He didn't ask again. Instead, he started watching in smaller ways. At dinner, his eyes followed my hands, how I held the fork, how I cut my food, how often I looked around. When I finished, he'd glance at my plate before clearing it. Never commented, never corrected anything. When I drew in my sketchpad, he'd ask what I was working on. I'd show him a floor plan of a 2-story house. No windows, just long halls and thick walls. He nodded and said, "Nice spacing." Then walked away. Once he stood outside my classroom window at recess. I didn't see him right away. When I turned, he was on the sidewalk near the fence, hands in his jacket pockets. The teacher didn't notice. He waited until the bell rang, then walked off without waving. That night, he asked what games we played. I said, "Hide and seek." He asked, "Did anyone find you?" I said no. He smiled and said, "You're good at being still." At parent-teacher night, the science teacher talked about my performance. "She's methodical," she said, "takes her time, follows steps precisely." My father nodded. "She always has." The teacher hesitated. "She's not very expressive, but she retains everything." "That's good," he said. "She copies experiments exactly," the teacher added. "Almost too exactly." He smiled again. After we left, he said, "You ask good questions." I said, "I don't ask many." He said, "You don't need to." He never raised his voice, never scolded, but he noticed everything. One afternoon, I came in from school and placed my shoes next to the rug. They were dusty. He glanced at them, looked at the soles, said nothing, then asked where we went for our nature walk. I told him. He nodded once, not like he approved, like he had already guessed. During thunderstorms, he didn't check on my mother when she panicked. He came to my room, asked if I needed anything. I said no. He stood by the window and watched the lightning. "You ever count the seconds?" he asked. I said, "Yes." He said, "Always count." Once when I dropped a glass in the kitchen, my mother rushed in, concerned. I bent down, picked up the largest piece, and laid it carefully in the trash. She pulled my hand back, worried about cuts. My father stepped forward, took my wrist gently, turned my palm over. He looked for blood. There wasn't any. He let go slowly. "Sharp instincts," he said. At a hardware store, I watched him explain drill bits to a man in a brown jacket. The man looked confused. He kept his voice calm, precise. On the drive home, he asked me to name the tools we'd seen in reverse order. I named 14. He said, "Good." In the garage, he showed me how to measure drywall without marking it. "In case you need clean surfaces," he said. I nodded. He said, "Always know what people will touch." In the basement, he kept everything labeled screws, clamps, wire, tarp. He had a drawer just for gloves, not one type. 3, he never explained. When my mother asked what he was working on, he said, "Just organizing." She never asked twice. In the fall, he raked leaves into piles, then flattened them with a shovel before bagging. I asked why. He said makes less noise, then handed me the shovel. Try it. I did. He watched. Afterward, he said, you don't hesitate. I didn't answer. He patted the top of my head. That night, I heard him on the phone. I stood in the hallway and listened. He said, she notices more than she says. Pause, no, I'm not worried. Longer pause, she's just focused. He never told me who he was speaking to. The next morning, my cereal bowl was already on the table when I came downstairs. I said, thanks. He said, I always know what time you wake up. I looked at the clock. It was exact. It happened behind the shed, just past where the grass stopped growing. I saw it while walking home from school. A small bird, maybe a finch, caught in a piece of torn netting near the fence. Its wing was twisted. One eye blinked too slow. I looked around. No one else was outside. I knelt, reached down, and touched it. It didn't move, just breathed hard, chest rising fast, eyes wide. I loosened the netting, then pressed down. It kicked once, then stopped. I stayed there for a while, holding it in both hands. It was soft, still warm. I watched the feathers shift with the wind. No sound. By the time I stood, the knees of my pants were damp. I carried it to the far end of the yard where the dirt was softer and used a stick to dig. Not deep, just enough. I placed it inside, covered it with both hands. When I came back inside, my father was sitting at the kitchen table, reading the paper. He looked at my hands, the dirt under my fingernails. He didn't speak. He just folded the paper once, carefully, and stood. He walked past me and opened the cupboard, pulled out a nail brush and handed it to me. Warm water, he said. I nodded. I scrubbed in the downstairs bathroom. The brush left red marks on my knuckles. At dinner, he passed me the salt and said, thank you, like I'd done something polite. My mother told a story about her coworker's dog getting into the compost bin. I didn't laugh. Neither did he. My mother started keeping flowers in every room, not real ones. Fabric stems, plastic leaves, petals that never curled. She placed them on windowsills, on bookshelves, even in the bathroom, right beside the soap, arranged like they were alive. She said they made the house feel brighter. She hung wind chimes on the porch. Soft ones, the kind that made more breath than sound. She lit candles at night and whispered bedtime prayers as if each syllable could cover the cracks in the walls. She baked on Sundays. Banana bread, cornbread, apple crumble, enough to fill the kitchen with the smell of something warm, something easy to swallow. She asked me to help. Sometimes I stirred. Sometimes I didn't. She didn't push. She sang when she cooked, hummed when she cleaned, sat beside me on the couch during cartoons and said things like, "This one's my favorite," even though she never watched more than a minute. When I left my toys out, she picked them up without saying anything. When I came in with muddy shoes, she wiped the prints herself. When I told her I didn't want birthday candles, she smiled and said, "That's okay." She kissed my forehead every night, said sweet dreams even when I didn't reply. Sometimes she peeked in twice. She believed in second chances, in gentleness, in talking things through. When a neighbor's son threw a rock at our fence and cracked one of the slats, she made him cookies. When my teacher sent a note home saying I didn't smile during group projects, she wrote back, "She's focused, not unhappy." She painted my room yellow. She hung up a string of stars above my bed. She told my father once, "We're lucky, she's just quiet." He didn't answer. She wrapped her arms around me from behind and said, "She's my calm in the storm." I didn't move. The wind chimes rattled against the porch glass, too soft to hear from inside. She smiled anyway. By 10, I knew how to search archives no one else looked at. Our local library had a dusty computer room in the back, thick monitors, keyboards that stuck, and an internet filter that barely worked. I learned how to bypass it. I typed in the name of the town we left and found articles, obituaries, forums buried 5 pages deep in the search results. I read everything. The articles didn't agree on much. Some said there were 5 victims, others said 6. The final count settled at 8, but no one could name them all in one place. Details changed depending on the year the piece was written. The most recent story I found was 3 years old. A journalist had tried to connect the cases. She failed. No one had ever been arrested. There were no suspects, only descriptions of what was left behind. The silence in each house after, the way neighbors changed locks and stopped making eye contact, the smell of bleach someone reported outside the third victim's back door. They never figured out the pattern, but I started to. I drew maps in my school notebooks, marked the distances between locations, noticed that 4 of the victims lived within 6 blocks of each other, 2 had kids, 1 worked at a bookstore, 1 was found on a church lawn. My mother didn't know I was reading this. When she caught me staring at a printed article, she took it out of my hand. "You're too young to be reading things like this." She folded it in half and threw it away. Later that night, I printed it again. My father noticed. He didn't ask why. He walked past the kitchen table and paused. "That map's off," he said, pointing to the grid I'd sketched in pen. He turned the paper around, tapped twice, and moved 1 dot half an inch with the cap of his pen, then walked away. I fixed it. The next day, I found a stack of old neighborhood directories in a box behind the school library. Street names, phone numbers, household counts. I added those to the binder. My mother said I had nightmares. I didn't. She told my teacher I had an active imagination. I didn't correct her. The more I read, the clearer it became. Whoever had done this knew the town, knew the people, knew how to make things look disconnected. None of the articles said that outright, but it was obvious. Obvious to me. I never said I thought it was someone we knew. I just kept reading, kept organizing, kept remembering details other people forgot. Someone knocked on our door. He knocked at 3:12 p.m. on a Thursday. My mother was washing fruit in the kitchen. I heard the faucet running, the low splash of water against metal, the buzz of the front doorbell pressed once, firm. She wiped her hands on a towel and opened the door without asking who it was. The man standing there wore a navy jacket and a tired smile. "Afternoon," he said. "Is Callahan Monroe home?" My mother hesitated, glanced over her shoulder. "He's at work. Can I help you?" The man reached into his coat and pulled out a small wallet, flipped it open just enough to show a badge and ID. "Detective Langford," he said. "Cold cases. I'm reopening something your husband assisted with years ago. Small town, different jurisdiction, but his name came up a few times in the files. Thought I'd stop by, ask a few questions." She stepped aside. He walked in slowly, taking off his jacket before she even asked. Hung it neatly over the back of a chair, set a leather folder on the dining table, then smiled at me. I was sitting on the couch, notebook open in my lap. I didn't move. "You must be their daughter," he said. "You've gotten tall." My mother raised an eyebrow. "Have you met her?" Langford shook his head. "No, ma'am, just seen pictures. There's one from a holiday party. Your husband had it in the old case files." She was sitting on his shoulders, I think. My mother smiled. She was 3, that was a good year. Langford sat at the table, flipping the clasp open on his folder. "I'm looking into a series of homicides," he said, "all unsolved. We're hoping fresh eyes will help." He paused, looked directly at me. "And sometimes the freshest eyes don't come from detectives." My mother frowned. "She's just a child." Langford tilted his head. 12, right?" I nodded. He turned back to my mother. "I'm not trying to drag your daughter into anything dangerous, but I've read some of her essays from school. Teachers say she's sharp, inquisitive, sees things differently." She laughed softly. "She reads too much." "That's all. Exactly the kind of mind I'm hoping to talk to." She didn't answer. He reached into his folder and laid out a stack of documents. Timelines, photos, newspaper clippings, all arranged in neat, parallel rows. His fingers moved slowly, deliberately, never overlapping pages. "We're not making accusations," he said. "This is just context. Old files revisited. Your husband helped with the community effort back then, and I want to understand what he saw. And if he saw anything odd." My father came home an hour later. He opened the front door, paused when he saw Langford, then stepped fully into the house, closing it behind him. Langford stood and offered his hand. "Callahan Monroe. Been a long time." My father shook it, firm grip, no smile. "Didn't expect company." Langford shrugged. "Didn't expect to find your name in so many old folders either." My mother offered coffee. Langford declined. My father sat down across from him. They talked for 26 minutes. Langford asked about the town, the victims, what my father remembered, where he was when certain events happened, who he helped, who he didn't. My father answered every question directly. No delays, no hesitation. Langford nodded often, scribbled a few things in his notebook, then closed the folder and stood. "Appreciate the time," he said. He reached for his jacket, then turned to me. "If you're up for it," he said, "I'd like to show you a few things sometime, just get your take." I didn't respond. He smiled again. "Sometimes the right mind can find things we miss." He left a card on the edge of the table, then walked out the door. My mother turned to my father. "Why would a detective want to talk to a child?" My father didn't look at her, he looked at me. He came back 2 days later, this time alone, no folder in sight. Just a small messenger bag slung over his shoulder and a thermos in his hand. He didn't knock. My father had told him to come back if necessary, and apparently that counted. He asked for me directly. "Mind if I borrow her for a bit?" he asked my mother, "just to get a fresh set of eyes on something I've been stuck on." She hesitated, then looked at my father. He didn't say no. Langford and I sat at the dining table. He unzipped the bag slowly, pulling out a single folder this time. It was thinner, more focused. "I won't show you anything graphic," he said, "just patterns." He laid out 3 sheets of paper. First, a street map marked with red pins and small numbers. Second, a list of names with dates beside them. Third, a photo, black and white, cropped, a corner of a porch, a doorknob. He tapped it gently. This print showed up behind one of the houses. Partial, smudged, not enough for a match back then. He handed me a 4th page. Recent, a lab report, new database systems, new scanning tech. This fingerprint, he said, was finally matched. I read the name at the top. Callahan Monroe. I didn't flinch. He went quiet. Let the paper sit there between us. "It's not proof of anything," he said. He lived in the area. Knew the neighbors. Said he helped clean up after the police left. Could be innocent. He paused again, but it's something. He watched my face. I didn't give him anything. "Do you remember the town at all?" he asked. I shook my head. He pulled out another page, a layout of a house with rooms labeled. Marked in red were 3 entry points. Beside them, he'd written questions. "Nothing was taken," he said. "Nothing broken, no forced entry." He looked back at me. "What does that sound like to you?" I looked at the paper, then looked at him. Someone they trusted. He nodded slowly. I placed the papers back in the folder, neat and square. He closed it gently. "I'll be back in touch," he said. He stood and slipped the bag over his shoulder. Left without saying goodbye to anyone else. My mother was outside watering the plants. My father was in the garage. I watched Langford walk down the driveway and toward his car. Then I stood, slipped my shoes on, and followed. He unlocked the driver's side door without checking his mirrors. The wind picked up slightly, pushing a few leaves across the street. He reached into the front seat, tossing his bag in first, then bent forward, searching for something beneath the dashboard. I crossed the lawn without a sound. No one was on the sidewalk. No one was at the window. The garage door was still half open, the lights inside flickering. I opened the back door of the car. Quiet, he didn't hear it. I stepped in, crouched low behind the driver's seat, and closed it softly. The air inside smelled like coffee and leather. His thermos was in the cup holder. A notepad sat between the seats, pen uncapped. He climbed in a few seconds later. Adjusted his seat, buckled in. The ignition turned. His hand reached for the gear shift. I moved fast. The cord looped tight before he could make a sound. His body jerked once, a reflex, but I had already pulled. Hard, precise. He kicked against the pedals. One arm flailed backward, hit nothing. His head slammed into the window once, but not hard enough to leave a mark. I didn't let go. 30 seconds. The struggling slowed. 45. His hands dropped to his lap. At 1 minute, I let go. He slumped against the door, mouth slightly open, eyes fixed on something he couldn't see anymore. I checked his pulse. None. I opened the door again, quieter this time, slipped out. Closed it. I walked back across the lawn and into the house. My mother was still outside. My father was still in the garage. The car engine was off now. Everything was quiet. The front door was unlocked. I stepped inside, pulled it shut behind me, and kicked my shoes off one by one. No rush. The hallway smelled like garlic and lemon. Something was simmering on the stove. My mother was still humming in the kitchen. She didn't look up as I walked past. "Dinner's almost ready," she said. "Can you wash your hands?" I nodded and turned into the downstairs bathroom, closed the door, locked it. The light flickered once before staying on. I turned the tap. The water was warm, almost too warm. I ran my fingers under it, flipping my palms back and forth, then reached for the soap. Lathered, scrubbed. The dirt came off first, then the smear of red under my left thumbnail. I pressed harder with the nail brush hanging from the faucet. The bristles bit into the skin. I didn't stop. I counted. 40 strokes on the left hand, 40 on the right. My mother knocked once. "You okay in there?" "I spilled juice," I said. She laughed softly. "That new one you picked, the cherry." "Yeah." I rinsed again. The sink swirled pink, then clear. When I came out, she was setting the table. My father had just walked in from the garage, wiping his hands with a rag. He nodded when he saw me, didn't say anything. I sat down. He sat across from me. She brought over the pasta. Set it in the middle, poured water into each glass. We ate. He didn't ask me anything. He just watched. Every time I reached for the fork, every time I took a sip, every time I didn't look away. He was already in the living room when I came down later that night. The TV was on, but the volume was low. A muted news anchor gestured at a map. The remote sat untouched beside him. He wasn't watching it. He was waiting. I sat on the edge of the couch. He didn't turn his head, just said, "Did anyone see you?" "No." He nodded once. "How long?" 2 minutes, maybe less." "Did he struggle?" "A little." He picked up the remote, turned the screen off. "Where is he?" "In the car, slumped toward the driver's side, belt still buckled." He turned his head then, not startled. Not angry, just present. "You could have waited." "I didn't want to." His eyes searched my face. Then he asked, "Why did you do it?" He was asking questions. He nodded again. We sat in silence for a few seconds. Then I asked, "Why did you let me?" He didn't answer right away. He leaned back into the couch, placed both hands flat against his thighs, and exhaled slowly through his nose. "I needed to see if you would." "Why?" "Because there's a difference between knowing something and proving it." I looked at him. "Prove what?" He tilted his head. "That you're not just watching anymore." I didn't reply. He stood up, walked toward the window, pulled the curtain back half an inch and looked outside. "It's clean." "Yes." "No prints." "No." "No one saw." "No." He let the curtain fall back into place, then turned to me again. "Good." He didn't say anything else. He walked down the hall and turned into his office, closed the door behind him. No click, no lock, just quiet. He was sitting at the kitchen table when I came down the next morning. The sun hadn't fully risen. Pale light filtered through the window blinds in strips across the tile. The folder was open on the table, not Langford's. His. Inside, newspaper clippings, photocopied pages. Old neighborhood maps printed in black and white, highlighter bleeding through the edges. A stack of photos clipped together in the corner, dates scribbled along the backs. He didn't look up. "Sit down." I sat. He placed a sheet of paper in front of me, a grainy image of a back porch, cropped close, a sliding glass door, a handprint just barely visible on the handle. "Victim 3, he said. He pulled out another. A blueprint of a ranch-style home, 3 bedrooms, marked with red ink along the window frames and the back gate. "Victim 5. He placed a third paper beside it. 8 total, he said. I didn't speak. He picked up the stack of photos. Flipped through them one by one. She was a schoolteacher. This one worked nights at the corner store. One was a barber, one was 14. He placed the stack down slowly. I used to remember all their names, I don't anymore. I wrote them down somewhere. I waited. He reached into the folder again, pulled out an envelope, slid it across the table. "I never showed this to your mother." Inside, a small notebook, spiral-bound, corners curled from use. He opened it to the middle, held it up. Tally marks filled the page, just short lines in sets of 5, carefully grouped. I started keeping score. That was the part that made it real. He closed the notebook and laid it flat. I told myself it was about control, at first. He stood, walked to the sink, filled a glass of water. "I didn't pick them randomly," he said. He drank, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. I watched, waited, learned everything I needed to know before the first one. After that, it got easier. He turned around, leaned against the counter. The second one, I regretted that one, not because she didn't deserve it, just too close. Messier than it should have been. He set the glass down. The third made me better. He looked at me. I didn't think you'd understand. I didn't answer, but you did, you do. He walked back to the table, pulled out a final sheet. It was a floor plan of our old house, the one from before. He tapped the upper right room. That used to be mine. He folded the paper in half and placed it back in the folder. He sat down across from me again, laced his fingers together. I stopped after her. He meant my mother. I tried, not for her, for you. I looked at him, he stared back. I didn't want you to see that part of me. He unfolded another sheet. It wasn't from the folder. It was a school report, one of mine, a short essay about silence. The kind kids write in class when the teacher gives them 5 minutes and a prompt. He tapped the last line. You wrote this when you were 7. He slid it across the table. I read the words aloud. Some people like quiet because they've already said everything important. He leaned forward. That's how I knew. I looked at him. You weren't afraid of silence. You listened to it. The wind chimes outside clinked against each other. He picked up the notebook and placed it into the envelope, closed the folder, set both aside. You didn't ask for this, he said. I didn't move. But you didn't flinch. He stood up again, moved to the window, looked out at the yard. The trees swayed. Leaves rustled against the siding. You did what I couldn't do. He meant Langford. I thought about it after the fingerprint came up. I even rehearsed what I'd say if he found me first, but I didn't act. He turned around. You did. He walked back slower this time, sat down. I'm not asking you to forgive it or repeat it. I just want you to know where it started. He opened the folder again and pulled out a small black and white picture. A man in a police uniform, face stern, no smile. My father. He passed it across the table. He taught me to follow rules. He reached into the envelope and pulled out a second photo. Same man, civilian clothes, holding a shotgun beside a ditch. He never told me when to break them. He gathered the papers again. If you want me to stop talking, say it now. I stayed quiet, he nodded. Then he said I was the monster. He didn't whisper it, didn't flinch. It wasn't an apology, it was a fact. He folded the folder shut, pushed it toward me, then got up and walked out of the kitchen. He stood at the stove, stirring something in a saucepan. It was early. My mother wasn't awake yet. The lights were still dimmed, the hallway still quiet. He didn't turn around when I walked in. Couldn't sleep? He asked. I didn't answer. He reached for the salt, shook it twice into the pot, stirred again. His sleeves were rolled up, his shoulders relaxed. He moved slowly like he had all the time in the world. I picked up the knife from the drying rack. He heard it. He stopped stirring. He didn't turn around. I always wondered, he said. I took a step closer. Still, he didn't turn. If it would be you, he added. Or no one at all. The knife stayed in my hand. He didn't flinch. You don't have to, he said quietly, but I won't stop you. I stepped forward. He closed his eyes. It didn't take long. He slid to the floor without a word. No struggle, no sound, just one exhale. I stood over him until his chest stopped moving. Then I placed the knife in the sink, turned the faucet on, let it run. The pan on the stove started to boil over. I turned off the burner. The hallway stayed quiet. My mother's slippers hadn't touched the floor yet. I wiped the counter, threw the dish towel in the laundry bin, collected the folder from the table and carried it upstairs. I closed the bedroom door, sat on the edge of the bed. The wind outside shifted the blinds. Soft tapping against the glass. The clock on the wall ticked. Downstairs, the kitchen was silent. She came downstairs humming. The way she always did when she was rested and the house was still quiet, before emails, before errands, before the world could remind her that peace was a delicate thing. She called his name from the hallway, no answer. She called again, louder, then her steps quickened. The humming stopped. The scream came so fast it cracked in the middle. I heard it from upstairs. It stretched through the walls, sharp, shaking. Then footsteps rushed, unsteady. Then the sound of her dropping to her knees. I didn't move. I sat on my bed and listened. Her voice broke over and over. No, no, Callahan, wake up. What happened? What happened? A crash, probably the glass. The one he was using. The one she'd probably reached for by instinct before it slipped from her hands. She shouted for me. I didn't answer. Then the call. her voice shaking into the phone, barely making sense. "There's blood, he's cold. I don't know, please, please, just come." She stayed with him for a long time. She rocked back and forth on the kitchen floor, whispered his name, then shouted it, then whispered again. Her hands slapped the floor once, then twice, more sobs, more silence. The sirens came later, lights flashing against the walls. I sat by the window but didn't look out. I watched my reflection instead. Downstairs they knocked. She let them in, her voice breaking in short bursts. They checked his pulse. Confirmed what she already knew. They asked questions. She barely answered. She kept repeating the same phrase. "I don't understand. I don't understand." They wrapped a blanket around her. She didn't feel it. Her hands were shaking too much to hold the tea someone offered. They led her into the living room, sat her down. The kitchen door stayed open. I could see the edge of his boot from the stairs. The blanket they used to cover him didn't reach the floor. The officers stayed until after sunrise. 2 cars, one unmarked, the other with a light bar that never turned on. They parked on the curb like they didn't want to be noticed, like they were handling something delicate. I stayed upstairs. One officer walked the perimeter of the house, pausing at the back gate. He made a few notes in a small pad, then moved on without opening it. The paramedics came next. They brought the stretcher in through the garage instead of the front door. My mother wouldn't let them zip the body bag right away. She hovered, eyes wide, repeating, "This doesn't make sense," over and over. They let her say it as many times as she needed. They called a neighbor to sit with her. Mrs. Donnelly came over in a bathrobe, hair still in curlers. She wrapped her arms around my mother and whispered, "Oh, honey," until my mother stopped shaking. They sat together on the couch. 2 cups of tea went cold on the coffee table. Neither of them drank. The officers asked questions. My mother answered slowly, "No, we weren't fighting. No, he didn't mention anything unusual. No, I didn't hear anything until I came downstairs. Yes, she was home." They glanced up the stairs. One of them called my name. I came down slowly, calmly. He asked, "Did you hear anything last night?" I said no. "Was your father acting strangely?" "No." "Did you notice anything out of place?" I shook my head. He nodded. "You're very calm." I looked at him. He didn't ask anything else. They let me go back upstairs. An hour later, the body was taken. The neighbors gathered on the lawn like people do when they don't know what else to do. Some crossed their arms. Others just stood, quiet, watching the stretcher disappear behind tinted glass. No one spoke to me. At school, I was marked absent. The counselor sent home a letter the next day offering grief support, a space to talk. I placed it in the drawer next to my math worksheets. The headline in the local paper read, "Community mourns after sudden loss of local father." There was no mention of Langford, no photo, no questions. They ruled it a domestic tragedy. Sudden, unexplainable. A breakdown, perhaps. A psychological snap. Words like overwhelmed and private struggles found their way into quiet conversations. My mother didn't argue. She gave them a story they could understand. "He was tired," she said. "He'd been keeping too much inside." The town accepted it. They dropped off casseroles, flowers, sympathy cards. Someone left a basket of muffins with a handwritten note that read, "Callahan always helped when we needed it. We'll never forget that." No one asked how he died. No one asked why. No one asked anything at all. 2 weeks passed. The police report was filed. No investigation followed. No follow-up calls. Langford's name never came up. Not at the funeral. Not in the obituary. Not in the report. His car was found in a long-term parking lot outside city limits. Windows fogged, bag still in the front seat. They marked it as abandoned. No trace, no connection. His department listed him as inactive. Then silent, then gone. His notes disappeared with him. No one traced his visits. The files he shared weren't logged. He became a missing person. One of many, but not for us. In the kitchen drawer next to the extra napkins sat a sealed envelope addressed to the estate of Langford. My father's handwriting on the front. Inside, copies of every report, every photo, every marked-up blueprint. All dated, annotated, cataloged, neat, precise. I slid the drawer closed. My mother barely spoke for the first month. She moved slowly, rearranged things that didn't need rearranging. She folded towels that were already folded. She changed the sheets every night. Once, she started boiling water and forgot why. She stood at the stove for 10 minutes before turning it off. Sometimes she asked questions aloud when no one was in the room. She slept with the hallway light on. She stopped playing music while cooking. The wind chimes on the porch were silent. She didn't touch them. When the school counselor finally called to check in, she said, "We're healing." She used that word 4 times in the same sentence. "We're healing. It's just going to take time, but we're healing." They believed her. The town believed her. They always had. A week later, she took down the family pictures in the hallway. Not all of them, just the ones with his face in them. The wedding photo. The beach trip. The one where he was holding me, arms outstretched, smile wide. She boxed them carefully. Didn't throw anything away. She just placed the box in the attic. By month 3, the neighbors stopped checking in. By month 4, no one mentioned his name anymore. He became a story people told themselves. The man who worked with his hands, who helped build fences, who shoveled driveways for free, who donated tools to the high school's shop class, a good man, a quiet man. They said he was private. They said he was always dependable. They said, you never really know what someone's going through. And just like that, the case was closed. The dreams started 3 nights after the funeral. Not dreams like the ones they talk about in therapy, not symbolic or haunted. No storm clouds, no locked doors, no monsters under the bed, just patterns. The first was a map, overhead view, grid layout. 4 streets crossing at exact 90-degree angles, each house a perfect square. The streetlights blinked in even intervals. Every 10th yard had a tree, every 5th had a porch light still on. One house had none of those things. I woke up before I saw who lived there. The next night I dreamed of numbers, not equations, sequences, dates, distances, timelines. September 12, 2.4 miles. 46 minutes between disappearance and discovery. Names next to years. Shoe sizes. Entry points labeled clockwise, front, side, rear, 1 gate left open, 1 screen door unlocked, 1 welcome mat flipped over, corner bent. I wrote them down after I woke. Not because I was scared, because I didn't want to forget. The pages filled quickly. Sketches, notes, arrows, cross-sections of streets I'd never walked, building layouts, list of behaviors, not symptoms, traits. A teacher who stares too long at one student. A neighbor who carries a leash but never walks a dog. A man in the grocery store who puts a single can in each bag and takes 20 bags home. No one taught me how to track. But the patterns taught themselves. I stopped reading fiction, started reading court transcripts, unsealed files, public records, old missing person reports, the kind without closure. I printed the ones that felt familiar. I highlighted everything others overlooked. A broken window in a locked house, a receipt with a 30-minute gap between timestamps, a child whose backpack was found dry after a storm. The internet offered more than the library ever could. Message boards, case files, open source analysis. I didn't join the discussions. I read, I watched, I sorted. My mother thought I was working on a school project. She knocked before entering now, called my name softly through the door. Never pushed, "Do you want to eat downstairs tonight?" "No. I'll leave something on the tray, okay." "Okay." She left lasagna once. The next night, chicken. The tray never came back full, but it didn't always come back empty. I started watching people again. At school, at the store, at the edge of the soccer field during my PE period. I took notes. Not names, just behaviors. The man who stood at the corner of the lot but never moved closer. The substitute teacher who carried a stack of ungraded papers every day and never gave them out. The girl in homeroom who changed seats whenever someone looked at her too long. None of them were wrong. None of them were right. But one of them was close. I started seeing her outside of school, at the bus stop. Behind the laundromat, she didn't see me. I watched from across the street, behind fences, through reflections. Her patterns didn't match at first. Then they did. She talked to children too sweetly, gave them gum from her pocket, touched their shoulders when no one else was looking. One day, I followed her. She took a different route home than usual. I wrote it down. 7 left turns. 3 blocks with no sidewalks. 2 fences that backed up to nothing. A month passed. Then someone else disappeared. It wasn't a child. It was a man, 35, worked 2 jobs. Last seen near the intersection I'd written down 3 weeks earlier. The news report was short, a few sentences. I clipped it and filed it behind the others. I waited. 2 days later, they found his body in the woods. Shallow grave, no witnesses, few details. The story vanished after that. My mother didn't mention it. She stopped watching the news. She baked again instead. Cookies, muffins, something new every week. She placed them on a tray and left them at my door. Sometimes I ate one. Sometimes I didn't. She never asked. I started having the same dream again, the grid. But this time, the porch light was on. I walked toward the house. The window was cracked, the mailbox full. The streetlights blinked out as I passed under each one. I reached the door. Then woke up. Every night I got closer. Eventually, I stepped inside. It wasn't a house. It was a hallway, long, white, silent. At the end, a room with no door. Inside, a chair, and the girl from school, sitting, waiting. She never looked up. I stood in the doorway. She spoke without turning around. "You're not scared of me." "No. You know what I did." "Yes." She laughed softly. "Then what are you waiting for?" I woke up before I answered. The next day, she didn't come to school. The counselors handed out a note. Said she transferred. Said her family moved away. No forwarding address. No goodbye, just gone. The next dream, the house was empty. The porch light was off. I stopped sleeping after that. Didn't need to. The patterns were complete, and I had work to do. He used to keep his shirts folded in sets of 3. Black, white, gray, repeated over and over in the drawer by the window. He said it made mornings simpler. "Fewer choices," he told my mother once, holding up 2 identical t-shirts. "Less thinking." He shaved at the same time every morning. He poured coffee before the machine stopped dripping. He locked the front door and then checked it again exactly 5 seconds later. Not obsessive, just consistent. When I started folding my own laundry, I did it the same way. Same sequence. Same drawer. When he noticed, he didn't say anything. He just nodded. Once, when I was 9, he handed me a tool from the basement shelf. I'd never used it before. A handheld planer. "Take a little off the edge," he said, pointing to a piece of wood that didn't quite fit in the window frame. "Slow, even, listen to the sound." I did. The curls fell in perfect spirals. He said nothing, just watched. Afterward, he passed me a rag. "Wipe it down, always clean the mess." He didn't have to show me again. Years later, I found the planer in a box behind the shed. It was still clean. He didn't throw things away. He preserved them. Just like the files, just like the patterns. He never told me what he was. He never confessed. He didn't need to. Everything he did, everything he built, everything he cleaned, it was all part of the same lesson. He showed me how to carry it without words. He was never dramatic. He was deliberate. And I followed. Not because he made me, because he didn't have to. I knew what he was before I knew the word for it. He didn't create me. He activated me. They still wave when I walk past. Neighbors, classmates, store clerks. Even the woman at the post office who gets my name wrong every time. They say things like sweet girl and quiet type and so polite. I smile when I'm supposed to. Hold the door open. Say thank you. Keep my head tilted at the exact angle that makes people believe I'm listening even when I'm not. No one asks too many questions. The school counselor sent me a card last week. "Thinking of you," it said in pink letters. She signed it with a small drawing of a sunflower. I placed it in the bottom drawer of my desk, under the stack of local newspaper clippings I've been collecting since we moved here. So far, 4 people have gone missing in the county. None of them from this neighborhood, not yet. The headlines call it unrelated. The articles are short. The news segments are shorter. A jogger disappeared off a trail. A bartender didn't show up for work. An elderly woman failed to pick up her prescriptions 3 weeks in a row. The police chalked it up to transience and age. No one's connecting anything. Not yet. I haven't done anything. Not here. Not yet, but I've seen 3 people I'm watching. Closely. One leaves their house exactly 12 minutes after the streetlights come on. Another checks their mailbox 5 times a day, but never takes anything out. The third parks across from the elementary school and doesn't pick anyone up. I haven't followed them home. I haven't memorized their schedules. I haven't printed their names and attached them to the board behind my closet door. Not yet, but I will. It's only a matter of time. The patterns are already starting to form. The town is too trusting, too quiet, too easy. I joined the library volunteer program last month. The woman who runs it says I'm a joy to have around. She asks me to help with the younger kids during reading hour, says I have a calm presence. The kids like me, they always do. They think I'm patient. They think I'm kind. They don't realize I don't blink when someone drops a glass or cries over a paper cut. They don't realize I'm not waiting for them to finish. I'm timing how long it takes. One of the moms left her purse unattended near the story corner last week. I sat beside it for 13 minutes before she remembered. She thanked me for being honest, called me a little guardian angel. I smiled, she believed it. They all do, even the teachers. Even the ones who should know better. They see straight A's, folded papers, polished shoes, and a straight spine. They don't see the column of lists I keep in the last 10 pages of my notebook. I label them with shapes, not names. Triangle, seen with children, overshares personal details. Circle carries gloves but no coat. Square walks without rhythm, watches without blinking. The notes keep growing. I haven't acted, not yet. But the pieces are moving, shifting into place. They always do. This town reminds me of the one we left. Too bright, too trusting, too convinced nothing bad ever really happens here. The grocery store manager leaves the back door propped open every Thursday at 9:20 am, I know, because I've checked 4 weeks in a row. He smokes out back, never locks the loading dock. The alley behind the florist is narrow but quiet. The park cameras blink red, but none of them record. I know because I stood under each one and waited. The sidewalk ends at the edge of the woods. No fences, no lights, just quiet. Every town has soft spots. Weak seams in the fabric, places where sound disappears, where people forget what they were doing, where it's easier to slip in and out without being seen. It doesn't take much, just planning, just patience. I learned that a long time ago. From someone who built fences for everyone but himself. From someone who showed me how to draw a map and walk it backward. From someone who thought the quiet was his legacy. It wasn't. He was just the beginning. I'm better than he was. I don't rush. I don't repeat mistakes. I don't linger where people expect me to be. I blend. They think I'm the quiet one. The strange one, but harmless, just like they thought of him. And they haven't caught me yet. They won't, because they're not looking in the right direction. They never are. Thank you for watching. Please do not forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. I love you all.